Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Joey Dwyer here from home, but my guy Brandon Bigsby is in Memorial Gym tonight, 105 to 59 or 53 win for Vanderbilt over Citadel tonight. Vanderbilt moves to 10 and 1. Last year it had 9 wins, Brandon. This year has already eclipsed that before the start of the new year. I think tonight wasn't overly impressive in itself. It was a game against one of the worst teams in the country, to be quite honest, but Vanderbilt comes out and takes care of business in a way that this program so often hasn't against teams like this. And I think it was just a night that you kind of look back on the progress they've made through the first month and a half of the season and kind of reflect. And that was the theme of the night for me. They scored 100 points twice on the season now. And you have a stat that I think will shine some light on how rare that is in this program's history. But Brandon, I'm going to swing it to you. Tell me the significance of everything that Vanderbilt was able to do tonight.
Yeah, Joey. I mean, just a dominant performance really for Vanderbilt from the tip. And I think that even with that dominance, like you said, maybe not crazy, overly impressive considering it was Citadel, who is 355th in the net out of 366 teams. But one thing that I think Vanderbilt, regardless of who the opponent was, have to feel really good about. Second time this season, Joey, that they scored over 100 points. That's the first time that a Vanderbilt team has done that since the 2006 and 2007 season. That season, it's the last time that Vanderbilt made the Sweet 16. I'm actually that banner right up there above me, which is crazy enough. But just to see what this program, what this team is doing in just such a short time. You mentioned it earlier, their 10th win of the season, more wins than they had all of last season, which is pretty crazy to think about. But I mean, not just the win, but how they won and what they were able to accomplish in winning, I think is what makes this game so impressive. Five different players scoring double figures: Devin McLaughlin and Jason Edwards, both with 19 apiece. Jalen Carey with one of his better games, I think, of the season. We saw AJ Hogard have a couple of flashes. Tyler Nickel had a nice little spurt there in the second half where he had 8 points. So a lot of different guys that really stepped up and contributed to this one. But again, just in the grand scheme of the steps that this program has taken with Mark Byington and staff, I think that tonight you really saw a lot of that in terms of not just the win and how they looked, but also a few of the accomplishments and the records, I guess, they were able to set here with this win tonight.
For sure. I think outside of the historical anecdotes tonight, the theme of the night was dominance. And I think this program has so often been starved of that at this time of year. Saw on Twitter, people were saying, this is the first time I've left a game that early in years and not been worried about what was going to happen after that. Vanderbilt won this game, and we've talked about decisive wins. They won every every bye game by an average of 23.5 points before tonight, but you saw tonight was another level, and I don't think it was entirely different than what we had seen. I mean, they had played Jackson State and SEMO a little bit too close, but Maryland Eastern Shore they blew out of the water, and neither of those two games were particularly close either. I think Vanderbilt just really has taken a step in terms of taking these games seriously, and also you talk about the long layover. That's often been a detriment for Vanderbilt basketball over the years, and tonight obviously was not so. Brandon, I thought that was one of the themes of the night is just under this staff and with the attitude that this team has taken on, a veteran-laden team, they've kind of figured out that you can't overlook games like this, and as a result, they're just kind of running these teams off the floor.
Yeah, and I mean, really, I think again, not even just how they did it, but the dominance in the way they won. I mean, Joey, something that we've talked about so often with this team that have been concerns. And again, it's the Citadel, a team that's ranked one of the worst teams in the country. But still, I mean, you have to go out there and you have to get it done. Two stats that always stand out to me, Joey. Number one, the defense that they played. Citadel, they shot 41% from the field, but Vanderbilt had 35 points off of turnovers. They forced 20 turnovers from the Citadel. And not only that, but the rebounding, the story as well, out rebound the Bulldogs 38 to 27. But I think the big one is that 15 of their rebounds were offensive and Vanderbilt missed 30 shots. So when half of your misses, you're getting right back on the glass. That is insanely impressive. And then again, I know this is more than two stats, just three turnovers offensively for the Commodores as well. So I think just the fundamental things that Vanderbilt was able to really do and execute. And it's funny because in the press conference, Mark Byington was kind of like, a lot of those rebounds offensively came from us missing our own layups. So maybe not a perfect performance necessarily, but still a lot of the execution of the fundamentals. That was really, I think, what stood out to me about this performance today, outside of maybe some of the shooting numbers and the high point tallies.
Yeah, I thought tonight was a night that they kind of needed to get all their guys going again. I think even towards the end of when they were winning, it was a lot of their guys not doing it, and Jason Edwards kind of making up for that with his stellar play. He was really good tonight. Had 19 points, 50% shooting, shot 6 for 6 from the free throw line. But also they needed something from AJ Hogard that they hadn't gotten in a little bit. He had 13 points, 50% from the field, 8 assists, which underrated stat of the night. Jalen Carey I thought was a lot better. Had 12 points. It was pretty efficient. Brandon, how about Miles Keefe? Was that the Miles Keefe game? I think that was one of the stories of the night as well. But they finally got something from the guys that we thought were going to be guys that weren't necessarily guys throughout a lot of the early part of the year. Edwards, I think we knew was going to be good tonight. We knew McLaughlin would probably do a lot tonight. I was kind of waiting to see would Hogard maybe do some things that he hadn't over the last week of their games, and he did tonight. Tyler Nickel finally saw a couple go through as well. He's maybe starting to trend in the right direction, and you want to put the caveat in of this is one of the lower ranked teams in the country. I think Citadel could beat some teams. They got a nice win over Stetson earlier in the year and almost beat Central Arc on Monday. But when you're looking at Vanderbilt, you're looking at kind of a different league. I will say though, I thought it was really nice for them to be able to get those guys going. And also, I'll leave it to you on the turnover battle. Citadel turned it over 20 times. Vanderbilt turned it over 3 times. That's a stat that they've been stellar in all year, and it continued tonight. But one of the stories of the night for me, I thought, was some of their go-to guys looking like go-to guys again.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole thing with Citadel. Looking at their games, Joey, they were a 5-5 team coming in. Four of those five losses were rather reasonable. Lost to nine against the, maybe not a great Boston College team, but still a Power Five team that would likely beat the Citadel, you assume, by more than 9 points. Went on the road, played them tight. North Carolina A&T lost by 9. Played Charleston relatively tight around 15 points, and then again, you mentioned that Central Arkansas game that they really easily could have won that game a couple of nights ago, only lost by 2. Really, the only bad loss they have is Campbell, and that was about a 28-point loss. So even though the Citadel are one of the lower ranked teams in the country in terms of the net, even though they might not pop out to you as like, oh, that's a really impressive win, this is still a team that is shown to be at least capable. They have a really good scorer in Brody Fox, who was an All-American last year in Division III, averaged 26 points per game. They held him to just 8 tonight, and rather poor shooting as well in the process. So I think that even though it can be kind of easy for some to maybe shoo it aside because of the opponent, you just kind of look at some of the underlying things, and then you combine that with just how Vanderbilt was able to truly dominate this game really from start to finish. I mean, you mentioned the SEMO game where it felt like it was a little bit too tight for too long, and then the same thing with Jackson State. Really, this was a game that never once was it in doubt. There was never a thought in your mind that was like, man, you really wonder if the Citadel can maybe hang around this one if it gets tight. Vanderbilt dominated this thing from start all the way to finish. And I think that that is what the big story is tonight, as you mentioned, not just that they won, but how they won as well.
For sure. And I think they're really going to benefit in the net and Ken Palm from a win like this. I thought this was a game that could maybe hurt them a little bit just because of how low Citadel's ranked, but winning in that way is really impressive no matter who you do it against. And again, we do think Citadel is pretty capable. I really like Ed Conroy as a coach. I think he's really bright and obviously former Vanderbilt assistant coming back. That has not fared well in the 2 times that Vanderbilt assistants have come back this year. Maz kind of got his butt kicked with Cal, and then obviously tonight didn't go Conroy's way. But Brandon, I thought tonight was all around positive for Vanderbilt. Something we didn't talk about too, Tyler Tanner. It had some shades of Brentwood Academy, Tyler Tanner, when he did that spin move and got on the break there. That's what I'm looking to see more. I think that's going to come out more and more as we go. But overall, a really good night for Vanderbilt. Citadel back to the drawing board. Lipscomb guard, former Lipscomb guard Paxton Davidson, back to the drawing board. We are both Paxton Davidson guys, so tough night for us in that regard. But uh, again, Vanderbilt basketball keeps rolling. Tough one on Saturday with Austin P, probably their toughest bye game. I think Brandon will be there. I'll be at home still, but uh, for Joey Dwyer and Brandon Bigsby, we're out, and we'll talk to you Saturday. Peace.